And finally, in the States, I don't know if you know this, of the $300 billion in philanthropic money in the States, 75% of it comes from individuals. It comes from the filing in the W-4s, in the itemized deductions. It doesn't come from foundations and corporations. It comes from the regular people. In Israel, because we don't have an option to itemize our deductions in our salaries, or we don't have an end-of-year filing, none of that is accounted for. And one last statistic that I want to share with you. There are 34,000 amutot, registered amutot in Israel, registered nonprofits in Israel. But of those 34,000, only 15,000 actually file some kind of a formal information with the registrar of amutot. I'm talking about basic stuff. Who your board is, what your budget is, simple income expense, and salaried employees. So we have about 17,000 amutot who don't even do that. And so they're completely not accountable. And they don't get what we call nihul takin, proper management for filing that information. Furthermore, there are only 4,300 amutot that Israelis can get the tax credit for, that get the 46A authorization. Why? Because the tax authorities makes it very difficult to get that form, because it's very expensive to get that authorization. So only the largest organizations end up getting the 46A. There are other reasons too. I happen to know of organizations, I know of a very good organization that works in the Bedouin community that has been long-standing, and I have read their financial statements for years now, so I know they are financially sound, but they don't get the 46A because they work in the unrecognized villages of the Bedouin community. And I don't know how familiar you are with that community, but Israel is trying to get them settled. It's nomadic people. They like to move around. But we want them settled in one place because we want to be able to do things with those properties in the Negev. So while we're trying to get them settled and they don't want to do that, if any organization is doing work in the unrecognized communities of the Bedouin community, they won't get the 46I. These are the constraints. I think these constraints are going to be moved one by one. I do want to share with you that there is a growing philanthropic community. What you see on the screen now are the big names of the givers, what we call the Israeli givers. And before someone says to me, are these really Israeli? Is Shari Arison really Israeli? You know, the Arison Foundation, Carnival Cruise Lines? Yes, we consider her Israeli. Why do we consider her Israeli? Remember, Israel is a country of immigrants. We all are first generation, second generation, tops, third generation Israeli, but we consider Israeli if the funder lives in Israel, if their children attend the public school system and go to the army, and if they pay taxes in Israel and they have on-the-ground knowledge, then they are considered part of the Israeli philanthropic community. We also have some new infrastructures. All these organizations that you see here were founded not more than 7 years ago. Remember, we have substantial wealth being acquired in Israel the last 15 years or so, and then we have the supporting infrastructures starting a few years later, with JFN being the first and only membership organization of funders in Israel. You know, you have the federation system. You have the synagogue congregations. You have so many places where you meet and organize as funders. We have one. But we do have it. We didn't have it 7 years ago. We didn't have, actually, Jewish Funders Network in Israel is in its 4th year. Shitufim is an organization that was funded to deal exactly with what I showed you before, dealing with the legislation and the tax policies and all these issues that will help us to promote Israeli philanthropy. And now we have the Hebrew University actually studying Israeli philanthropy and what is being done there. And we have an organization called Committed to Give, which is ambassadors of philanthropy. People who, if you will, are trying to, people who are givers, who are major givers, who are trying to encourage others to give as well. In your questions that you had sent in to Michelle prior to this meeting, someone had asked, what do Israelis give to? And that's a very good question. Israelis give to, their giving is as diverse as the giving of people in this room. They have very different areas of interest, and that's good. We had had a conversation before. These are the people from Committed to Give, the ambassadors of philanthropy, if you will. If I go through this slide, Itzik Danziger is a person who decided to put his money on getting good, appropriate jobs for educated Arab people in Nazareth. So he created a social business that employs 300 or 400 Arabs now in providing IT services and actually giving them proper employment. And what I mean by proper employment, the guy who sells me my groceries every day, I do have 5 children, I go to the grocery store every day, sometimes twice a day. He is an Arab guy, and he's an accountant by trade, but he's doing groceries because he can't find a job. So getting them employment suitable for their profession is very important. Mirav Mendelbaum, she has a facility, a medical facility for the near homeless Holocaust survivors. We have a lot of Holocaust survivors in Israel who are obviously quite elderly, and many of them are very close to the poverty line, and they provide highly subsidized housing for people who are almost homeless. Noam Lautman is very concerned. They had a company called Delta Galil. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's a large textile company in Israel. Because it was up north, they had quite a few managers from the Druze community. Now, I don't know if you know, but the Druze community is you know, it's a unique community in the sense that they're not Jewish, but they all serve in the army, and they're very committed to Israel. But you know, they don't have one youth center in the entire Druze community. So their younger people have nothing to do in the afternoon. And when they have nothing to do in the afternoon, you know what they end up doing. So the Lautman Fund decided, given their experience with the Druze managers in their companies, to create youth centers in the Druze community. I can go on and on what these people do. There's Avi Naor, who's setting the new kibbutzim. You know what the new kibbutzim are now in Israel? They are educated groups of young people who move into impoverished neighborhoods, and by actually living there, they raise the quality of the people living in those communities and of the whole infrastructure in those communities. They are in Sderot and they're in Givat Olga, and they're doing amazing work. While people are shouting social protest in Rothschild Avenue in Tel Aviv, these people are living and doing it. They're walking the walk. So when you had asked me what matters to them, everything matters to the Israeli philanthropists, but mostly I think that the one differentiating factor between what American funders are doing in Israel and what Israeli funders are doing in Israel, they want to do social change. They want to shape the agenda, they want to affect the national policy, and they do that in any number of things. They do that in education and in welfare and in economic development and in arts and in sports. If I really want you to take anything from this talk, I want you to take this. I would like to ask you, I think I've met quite a number of US funders and European funders who give in Israel and do so in the most generous, important way. You know, as much as we have a growing Israeli philanthropic community, It's still a $3 billion philanthropic community. $2.5 billion of it is still coming from overseas. Only $500 million is coming from the Israeli philanthropy. It's still $500 million more than there was 30 years ago. You know, this is an evolving thing, but your support is still very, very important. But what I want to ask you is as you support the Israeli community, I see a lot of people, for example, I know of a funder who I'm meeting later on, who is very strategic in her funding in the States. They're doing legal assistance to underprivileged communities in the States. She's very involved, she is very experienced, she sits on boards, and in Israel, she gives to a museum. So what I ask you is when you choose your fields of interest in Israel, choose them where your heart is. Choose them where your areas of interest are and where your expertise is and where you can create connections between your grantees here and your grantees there. I know of a funder in San Francisco who is very involved in LGBT rights. But in Israel, he funds a university. There is amazing LGBT work being done in Israel. There are organizations working with Haredi and Arabs in the LGBT area. Fascinating, very interesting stuff being done in Jerusalem in that field. Very different stuff being done in Jerusalem than what's being done in Tel Aviv. So what I'm asking you is to focus your giving in Israel in those areas that matter to you. And I know that the reason why a lot of people don't do that is because they don't know where to start. So what I'm inviting you is to partner with those Israelis who do know. You tell me an area of interest that you have in Israel, and I will find you the funder who's doing that. And I will connect you. And the next time he's in Israel, he's here, or you're in Israel, meet with them. Get some on-the-ground knowledge from someone who's doing it, who's not just talking, who's actually doing it. And connect with them. And find an Israeli professional who can help you with your giving and do proper monitoring and evaluation of your giving in Israel, because you will get so much more out of it and you will be that much more effective. I think that's really the essence of the message that I want to get across, is reach out. Now we have the infrastructures there. Now we are on the ground and we can help you. So reach out to us. I have people just doing quick questions, sending, would you happen to know who can help us here, who can help us there? Reach out to us. We're now a network. So that's it. I'd welcome any questions that you might have. Yes?
I'm curious,